Good afternoon. Today is February 10th. This is the first meeting of the Revenues Subcommittee for the 2026 legislative session. Today we have one bill on our agenda as a work session. That is HB 290, which is a departmental bill. And today we're actually going to be starting with a presentation by our committee analyst, George Butler, to review a 2023 evaluation of this particular tax credit that the Department of Legislative Services conducted a couple years ago. Colleagues, we're going to go through this presentation, and I'll say if you have questions, especially once we get into the recommendations, feel free to use the virtual raise hand function. And George has kindly agreed that we can kind of take questions as we go through the presentation. And after we finish this presentation and have finished with the questions to our committee analyst, we do have some representatives here from the Maryland Department of Commerce to discuss whatever questions or issues we want to bring up in terms of the particular legislation. So with that, George, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we can proceed to the first slide. And as we begin, first I'd like to recognize the work of my colleagues, Tatiana Hill, Charity Scott, and Heather McDonough on the 2023 evaluation of the Buy Maryland tax credit. Under the Tax Expenditure Evaluation Act, the Department of Legislative Services evaluated the tax credit on several criteria. First, the purpose for which the tax credit was established. Second, whether the original intent of the tax credit is still appropriate. Third, whether the credit is meeting its objectives. Fourth, whether the credit's goals could be more effectively carried out by other means. And fifth, whether the cost of the tax credit, the cost of the tax credit to state and local governments. Next slide, please. If you go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Sorry.
Not working?
Thank you. So the credit was established in 2018 based on testimony and Commerce's statement to promote the cybersecurity industry by helping small businesses purchase cybersecurity technologies and services. The credit is equal to 50% of eligible costs, not to exceed $50,000 per buyer, and not more than $200,000 from a single qualified seller. Next slide, please. Statute authorizes Commerce to approve up to $4 million in tax credit certificates annually. However, Commerce has certified far less than that amount. This exhibit shows credit amounts that were certified in calendar years 2018 through June of 2023. Calendar 23 awards ultimately totaled just under $200,000. On average, in each year, 38 buyers are awarded $444,000 in credits for buying cybersecurity technology and services from approximately a dozen sellers. Next slide, please. So, in examining the intent behind the credit, DLS found that the intent of the tax credit to help small businesses protect business information is even more applicable today, given the cost of cyber attacks and the increasing frequency and sophistication of those attacks. In addition to the number of cybersecurity incidents increasing, costs and adverse consequences from cybersecurity incidents to companies are growing. And these costs include business interruption, lost revenue, ransom payments, remediation costs, liabilities to affected parties, cybersecurity protection costs, lost assets, litigation risks, and reputational damage. DLS also found that promoting the cybersecurity industry in Maryland will likely produce long-term benefits to the state. The clustering of established companies, startups, and business incubators around anchor institutions like the National Security Agency or U.S. Cybersecurity Command help to create technology spillovers that in turn boost innovation, as well as promoting a pool of specialized labor, access to capital, and interorganizational linkages. Next slide, please. DLS had a number of findings and recommendations regarding the credit. First, the credit appears to be underutilized, as indicated in the earlier exhibit. In light of that underutilization, DLS recommends that the General Assembly should consider terminating the program and instead explore other options, such as grants, to increase cybersecurity in the state for small businesses. In the alternative, if the program is to continue, DLS recommends raising awareness of the program. Next slide, please. So, Chapter 578 of 2018 established the credit, but it did not specify a specific goal or intent of the credit. And without clearly defined goals and objectives, it's difficult to identify metrics and data requirements to evaluate the effectiveness of the tax credit. So therefore, DLS recommends that the General Assembly should clearly define the intent of the program in statute. And in addition, we recommend that Commerce define performance metrics and periodically evaluate the program based on those metrics. In addition, during our review, we found that one company had overclaimed the credit, or to better describe it, that credits related to sales by one company had been overclaimed. And so we recommended that Commerce should report to the General Assembly on safeguards in order to prevent companies from overclaiming credits from a single seller. Next slide, please. In our review, we found that the program is unnecessarily complex, and in order to address some elements of that complexity, we recommend that the General Assembly eliminate the statutory requirement that Commerce award 25% of the authorized tax credits to qualified buyers that are purchasing cybersecurity services. We didn't think that it was necessarily good policy or to distinguish between cybersecurity products versus cybersecurity services. In addition, DLS found that the design of the program likely provides windfalls. So most tax incentives are designed to maximize their effectiveness by promoting economic activity that would not have otherwise occurred in the absence of the incentive. So that is, they focus as much of the benefit on increasing marginal spending rather than on total or recent spending. So for that reason, we recommend that the General Assembly should consider options to redesign the credit to prioritize new spending in cybersecurity. Next slide, please. Under current statute, businesses are not required to add back credits that they're claimed. And so DLS recommends that the General Assembly should consider requiring an add back in the amount of any purchased cybersecurity claim. That would help to prevent a double benefit, since these purchases would otherwise be able to be deducted already as business expenses. And so that would be one way to eliminate a double benefit that the companies currently receive. In addition, as part of our research, we found that cyber attack risks vary by industry. And for that reason, we suggest that the General Assembly should consider providing enhanced credits for industries that are most at risk of cyber attacks. Next slide, please. And lastly, statute authorizes Commerce, in consultation with the Maryland Technology Development Corporation, or MEDCO, to establish a panel of cybersecurity technology and services experts to assist Commerce in determining whether a cybersecurity business meets the requirements for a qualified seller. To date, Commerce has not done so, and so we recommended that the General Assembly either consider eliminating the expert panel in statute unless Commerce has a compelling reason to keep it. Next slide. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions from members.
Thank you so much, George. So colleagues, again, if you have questions on the presentation, we can start there. And then we can open it up more broadly to discussion on the bill. Yes, Delegate Vogel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I should probably find this, but what is the amount that is currently appropriated to this credit?
So as indicated earlier, Commerce is authorized to approve up to $4 million annually in tax credits.
And so it's 63,000 of those 4 million were used last year in 23.
No. So as
Am I looking
indicated,
at that
that was only
incorrectly?
credits that were certified up till June in 23.
Okay.
Ultimately, the credits authorized totaled approximately $200,000 for that year.
Okay.
And then in 2024, there were just over $400,000 in certificates approved. And in 2025, that amount increased to approximately $550,000.
Okay. Understood. Thank you.
Thank you. George, I have a question in regards to the DLS recommendation. So under state law now, that it's subject to an there, would I understand correctly then that there's not like broader language? I'm sorry, I don't
I'm
know if
sorry,
my question
Delegate, I'm
came
having to.
through. We're getting internet same on this end. Okay, we'll try again here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
The joys of the house building internet. So in regards to the add back, do I understand correctly that we have to specify that
Yes.
each individual state business tax credit is subject to an add back? There's not like a general catch-all provision under state law. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, other questions on the presentation? Okay, so then with that, I would invite our representatives from the Department of Commerce. I see Jen Lahat is here, and Abigail, I'm sorry, I don't remember what your last name is, but you are both welcome to come on camera. We might have questions for you as well. And I just want to start off by saying, as I said at the bill hearing, I'm very appreciative that the department, clearly did do your homework, read the DLS evaluation, and clearly some of the recommendations that DLS put forward are baked into your bill. So appreciative of that. And do you just want to maybe just give a refresher very briefly to the subcommittee about what is in the departmental bill?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me pull up my one pager just to make sure that I cover all of it because I know we had a lot of recommendations on it. One thing I know for sure we do have in the departmental bill is establishing the name clearly in the statute. That's one thing that is not in the statute. We've been calling it the Buy Maryland Cyber or Buy Maryland Cybersecurity Tax Credit, but that's not actually spelled out in statute. So we're putting that in statute. We are also adding the intent of the program in statute. We did also add a sunset to the program, and I know that's something that this subcommittee and the committee as a whole have been adding in with a lot of programs where they don't exist. So we've put a sunset in there. We have, so in terms of recommendations that were included in the DLS evaluation, again, the intent of the program, we are also recommending that we eliminate the panel of experts that, as noted, was not created for a few reasons. One of them being it's kind of hard to get people to volunteer to be a panel of experts when very often the experts that you would have would be the people who are interested in participating in the program, and that would be obviously an ethical concern. So we would not be able to put those people on a panel of experts involved with the program. So we have relied on the industry experts at Commerce to assist with the administration of the program and not private sector experts. We have also recommended eliminating that requirement that 25% of the credit be awarded for the purchase of services as opposed to products. And I believe, if I'm looking, those cover the recommendations that were specifically included in the DLS recommendations. I see George nodding, so I feel confident in that. The other recommendations that we have included in our proposal are a lot of adjustments to the other, I think, kind of restrictions and things that do overly complicate the program in a lot of ways. One is we have proposed eliminating the limit on the size of a company that can be considered a qualified buyer for the purpose of the tax credit. We have also proposed increasing the limit on annual revenue for a business to be considered a qualified seller. Also increasing the amount of credits that can be claimed by a buyer for purchases from a single seller, and making the credit refundable so that nonprofits could potentially benefit, or businesses that don't have a tax liability would see an incentive to participate. And I believe, Madam Chair, that covers the recommendations that we have.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So we'll start with some questions. Delegate Vogel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple questions. So you said the bill as drafted eliminates the restrictions on qualified seller and qualified buyer. We're eliminating that entirely with this bill?
For the qualified buyer, we are proposing to eliminate the restrictions, and that is a limit on the size of a company that can be considered a qualified buyer.
And the qualified seller, what are we doing there?
We are increasing the limit on annual revenue. So right now it's capped at 5 million in annual revenue to be able to be a qualified seller, and we are proposing to increase that to 10 million.
And we are increasing the amount that we can purchase from one qualified seller to 1 million.
Yes.
Okay, I guess the concern that I have and the question that I have is, given the fact that, like, is this just gonna create a system in which large businesses can just get a tax credit for buying from other large businesses that they would already be doing? They would already be doing that anyways, right? I love the idea of having this focus on having this provide the support to smaller businesses and nonprofits that otherwise wouldn't be able to make investments in cybersecurity. But some of these amendments or some of these changes seem to make that a little less likely to be the case.
So I understand the concern for sure. I think we would certainly be open to an amendment on that size of the company to be considered a qualified buyer, and maybe instead of eliminating it, we increase it. One of our goals here really was to, obviously the program has been very much underutilized, so we want to increase that buyer pool and do what we can to add more buyers in. I think making it refundable will help with that, and increasing the size of the company. Right now it's 50 employees is the limit. So if we can increase that, it's certainly progress, and I think would help. And we can always look and see, if that's not as successful as we had hoped, and maybe we need to look at it again when the sunset is coming up in a few years, we can tweak it a little bit more. I think we would certainly be open to conversations about what the right number might be, because I do think it needs to be more than 50.
Okay. One more question, if I may, Madam Chair. I think my only concern here is I totally understand wanting to increase utilization here, but I think that we should still stick to the goal of promoting the growth of smaller cybersecurity companies, right? That might not have that need the revenue to grow, and then also, focusing on the small businesses and nonprofits that need the support the most and can't afford it.
Yeah, and with that, that increase on the revenue side, we also worked with the Cybersecurity Association on this legislation, and I'm I'm really leaning on their expertise and their members' expertise on, I think, just kind of from an industry standard, what is a smaller company? Like, I mean, I think 10 million in the cybersecurity industry is still
Okay.
smaller.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I see language in there around like line 21 to 23, prioritizing groups that have historically been deprived of access. So I think that's fair. I think my concern then is more so with the qualified buyer piece. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next, recognizing Vice Chair Feldmark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my questions, I do echo Delegate Vogel's thoughts about sort of, it does seem like we're moving away from the small business goals of the program, or at least the definition of small is getting a little bigger, right? But I guess I really wanted to focus on two questions. One being the decision to make it a refundable tax credit. I understand the value in that, and particularly being able to provide the incentive to nonprofits as well as businesses on the buyer side. But I guess going back to the DLS recommendation to eliminate the credit and explore other alternatives such as grants, in making it a refundable tax credit, we're actually moving a little closer to a grant. But still with that sort of time delay. And so I guess I'm curious about the decision to make it a refundable credit versus a grant, and if you considered a grant program as an alternative, and what thought you gave to sort of the timing of when those funds could be awarded.
Yes. Thank you for the question. We did consider moving to a grant program, and it really came down to kind of a fiscal impact question. And so, as George noted earlier in response to the question about how much is appropriated for this program, it's a non-budgeted tax credit program. It's capped at $4 million, but we do not get an appropriation. If we were going to move to a grant program, we would have to get an appropriation for that. And just knowing the current fiscal climate and the likelihood and difficulty that we would face in getting a general fund appropriation as opposed to continuing an off-budget tax credit, we went with the less difficult path, I think.
Well, I can appreciate that, and I would say you're probably right. I think it is something that we should be paying special attention to in tough budget times, to look at these off-budget tax credits, right? Because they're not necessarily reflected, but it's still real money. And so, but I appreciate the sort of pragmatism of the approach. And then the other question I wanted to ask about is what data you have or could collect to help us evaluate the point that Mr. Butler raised earlier about focusing on purchases that would not otherwise occur. right? And is this incentive really changing behavior or simply a nice perk? And how do you intend to evaluate that?
Yeah, if oh, I don't know if I am having the technical issues or is it the vice chair, maybe? But is this just me that's seeing?
Yeah, I think we're
Okay.
still having some internet issues on our
Okay.
side, and
I
I
think it's our
apologize. My
building
phone
because
turned off.
If I can ask my colleague Abby McKnight to speak to whether in the application process, if we have that kind of information coming in, that we would be able to speak to that with the data that we're collecting right now, in terms of essentially the but for question with this program. Or that may be something that I would need to work further with the Cybersecurity Association and their members and kind of the sellers to get some more information. But Abby, can you speak to whether we have that?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jen. I've been working on the Buy Maryland since it started. I was probably hired to do this program. I'm now the program manager here at Commerce. Some of the I don't have that actual information, but because I deal with the businesses day in and day out, I would assume that they would go purchase from another state. The feedback that I get from the buyers is that they love this program. The sellers love this program. It really has helped out small businesses. So I don't actually have that data that we have in our applications. We pretty much obtain data for the requirements to meet the requirements of the program, whatever's in statute. So we don't have that available data. I could maybe reach out to some of the applicants and ask them if that's something you'd be interested in, but no, unfortunately, we don't have that particular data.
And just to follow up on that, and then actually I'll go to my colleague, Delegate Griffith. My recollection from the DLS report, or at least when it was done a few years ago, was that other states don't offer a comparable credit to this. Is that the case, or was the case, and is it still the case? And that might be a quick question for George.
I haven't looked to see what changes in other state statutes have occurred during the intervening period, but I can examine that, and if I do find any other state credits, then I'd be happy to update the membership accordingly.
Thank you. All
Yeah,
right,
Carl,
Delegate Griffith.
I
Oh, please
actually
go ahead.
Googled it last night.
Okay.
And I think you're correct. I don't think there's an equivalent in another state with regards to, mirroring the actual tax credit program. I did continue to read, though. I think there might be some similar programs, but not the same as our program. Thank you.
Delegate Griffith, you were very patient. Thank you for letting me jump ahead of you for a moment. You are now recognized.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. And so I always reserve the right to ask stupid questions. So a little leeway here. So to help me understand, so we're limiting the size of companies that can be the vendors that you can purchase these services from as well in this program?
Based on revenue, yes.
Right. And we're looking to raise that cap in this bill.
Yes.
And so the reason I would support that, for what it's worth, I guess this is less of a question, more of a, isn't that so? But because part of this is we want the companies providing these services to be effective and also to be cost effective as well. So when you're buying from a larger company, you're getting more cost savings, you're getting some more scale, you're getting some more expertise. So I do think it is appropriate to raise that cap for those reasons. Isn't that so?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Griffith. Okay, I think my colleagues have asked their questions. They're welcome to come back for another bite at the apple if anything else comes up. I did want to drill down a little bit more on this issue that the Vice Chair raised about, grant versus tax credit. And I wonder, would it be feasible from the department's point of view to do a hybrid approach where if you are a business, you're eligible for the tax credit, but perhaps there is a grant that is available for nonprofits?
That is a very interesting question that I would have to think over a little bit and how we would, especially internally, administer that. Just because also from the department's perspective, administering a tax credit is just different than administering a grant program. It frankly requires more work on our side to administer a grant program, because where on the tax credit side, our work ends, we hand the work off to the comptroller's office at a certain point. That work stays at Commerce with a grant program. So with a hybrid program, just in terms of like who's managing the program internally, would get a little complicated with like Abby and her team handing things off for a grant. But I think it's something we could work through if that was the program that was put into place in statute. It's not something that we've ever really had to work through or contemplate before.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, and didn't necessarily mean to put you on the spot for today. So I was going to say, I mean, I think if you all can take that back and kind of think through like the logistics of that, if that might work. I think for me and looking at that provision about the refundability, I get it that helps nonprofits and I don't have a concern there, but I think it's more from the side of, to Delegate Vogel's earlier point, like if you're talking about a large business who maybe already doesn't have tax liability in the state, I don't find that as quite as compelling in terms of giving a refundable credit on that side. So if there was a hybrid approach, it certainly would allow businesses to take advantage of the credit in a non-refundable way, but while opening up the program a little bit more. The one other question I wanted to raise about one of the other DLS recommendations was about just like increasing awareness of the tax credit. And Jen, or Abigail, if you can just speak to what the department's done on that front and kind of where you're thinking in terms of next steps.
Yeah, we have been working kind of internally, especially with our cybersecurity or cyber industry team, on making sure, even honestly, just with that team, that they are more aware of the program and that they are promoting it when they are out and working with businesses. I think we have more work to on our side in terms of promoting it to non-cybersecurity businesses, because I think for the potential qualified buyers, the awareness is out there more. I do believe we've increased the amount of buyers in recent years, if I'm remembering correctly, and we have somewhat increased the utilization. It's got the most recent year, it was up a little bit, but it's still well under where we would like to see it. I think it really is just a matter of internally making sure that the commerce team is fully up to speed on our kind of suite of programs when they're meeting with a business, that this may not have immediately come to mind to them because they were meeting with a non-cybersecurity company and maybe the idea of needing cybersecurity protections was mentioned, and we just need to get to a point where when someone is out in the field meeting with a business, they hear cybersecurity and they think like, oh, you should go apply for this tax credit. We've got this program. Let me connect you with, or give you the list of qualified buyers, and you can see who can meet your need. But we're working through that internally for sure.
Great. Colleagues, last chance on questions or just other points of discussion for this bill. Again, we're not voting on this bill today, but wanted to have the opportunity just to lay the foundation for this one. Okay, not seeing anything else at this time. I'll just make one other announcement before we wrap up for, I'm sure the hordes of people who are watching this live stream online. If you would like to be notified of future revenue subcommittee meetings, my office maintains an internal list. Just send an email to my office, julie.polakovichkar@house.maryland.gov, and we will get you added to that list and you will be notified of future meeting dates and what is on the agenda for those. But with that, I think we are adjourned for today. Thank you all.